People think the end of a marriage sounds like a door slamming or a plate shattering against a wall. They think it involves screaming matches and tear-stained faces. But for me, the end was completely silent. My name is Claire Whitmore. I am 36 years old, and I spent 10 years making myself smaller just so my husband, Ryan, could feel big. It happened on a Tuesday night. We were sitting at the exact same Italian restaurant where he had proposed to me a decade ago. The candle on the table flickered, but there was no romance left. Ryan wasn't even looking at me. His eyes were glued to his phone, his thumbs tapping away a message to Madison, his secretary, and now the woman he loved. He didn't apologize, he didn't look guilty. He just looked up, shrugged, and said the words that should have broken me. "Madison makes me happy, Claire, she understands me." He waited for me to beg. He waited for me to cry. But as I looked at the man who had emotionally neglected me for years, I didn't feel hurt anymore. I felt lighter. I realized that by losing him, I was finally gaining myself. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Claire Whitmore. I am 36 years old, and I live in a small coastal town called Harbor Pine, Oregon. When people ask how a marriage fails, they usually want to hear about a big explosion. They want to hear about a screaming fight in the driveway or a bank account drained overnight. But that isn't how it happened to us. That isn't how I lost myself. When I married Ryan 10 years ago, we were equals. We were a team. We lived in a small, cramped apartment in the city, and we didn't have much money, but we had each other. I remember nights sitting on the floor, eating takeout pizza, mapping out our future on the back of a napkin. We were going to build a life together. We were going to support each other's dreams. I was an interior designer. I had just started getting my own clients. Ryan was working in finance, starting at the bottom. We promised that we would always listen to each other. But then the success started coming. Not for us, for him. Ryan got promoted. Then he got promoted again. The money started coming in, and we moved to a penthouse. We bought expensive cars. On the outside, our life looked perfect. But on the inside, I was slowly disappearing. It started with small things. One evening, about 3 years into our marriage, I came home excited. I had just landed a contract to redesign a boutique hotel. It was a huge job for me. I wanted to celebrate. I bought a bottle of wine and made Ryan's favorite dinner, steak and roasted potatoes. When he walked through the door, he was on the phone. He held up a finger to silence me before I could even say hello. He walked past me, still talking, and went into his office. He stayed there for 2 hours. When he finally came out, the food was cold. "I have good news," I said, trying to keep my smile. "I got the hotel contract." Ryan didn't look up from his plate. He just cut his steak and chewed. "That's nice, Claire. But listen, I need you to pick up my dry cleaning tomorrow, and we have a dinner with the partners on Friday. Wear the black dress, the one I like, not the flowery one." My smile faded. "Did you hear me? The hotel contract. It's a big step for my career." He sighed. It was a heavy, impatient sound. He put his fork down and looked at me like I was a child who had interrupted an adult conversation. "Claire, please. I've had a long day closing a multi-million-dollar deal. I don't have the energy to talk about your little decorating hobbies right now. Can we just eat in peace?" Hobbies. He called my career a hobby. That was the first crack. Over the next few years, those cracks turned into a canyon. I became an accessory to his life. I was the woman standing next to him at parties, holding a glass of champagne, smiling when he told jokes. But I wasn't allowed to speak. If I tried to add to the conversation, he would cut me off. He would put a hand on my shoulder, a heavy, controlling grip, and steer the conversation back to himself. He stopped asking me how my day was. He stopped asking what I thought about movies, or news, or where we should go on vacation. He decided everything. He decided we were going to vacation in Aspen, even though I hate the cold. He decided we were going to repaint the living room gray, even though I told him it made the room feel dead. He decided when we ate, when we slept, and who we saw. I remember my 33rd birthday. I wanted a quiet dinner, just the two of us. Instead, he threw a massive party at our house for his clients. There were 50 people there, and I didn't know half of them. Ryan spent the whole night laughing with his boss, pouring expensive scotch. I stood in the kitchen alone, cutting my own birthday cake. Ryan came in to get more ice. He saw me standing there. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, annoyed. "You're the hostess. You should be out there entertaining." "It's my birthday, Ryan," I said softly. He rolled his eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Claire. This party is good for my image." Stop making everything about you. He grabbed the ice bucket and walked out. I stood there in the silence of the kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and empty bottles. I felt tears pricking my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I realized then that to him, I wasn't a person. I was just part of the furniture. I was something he owned, something that was supposed to make him look good. That night, I went to the guest bedroom and slept alone. He didn't even notice I was gone. The emotional neglect wasn't a sudden slap in the face. It was a slow erosion. It was like water dripping on a stone, day after day, year after year, until the stone was worn down to nothing. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was boring. Maybe my career didn't matter. Maybe I should just be grateful for the money and the penthouse. I stopped fighting. I stopped sharing my opinions. I stopped trying to be his partner. I became a ghost in my own house. I thought that was the worst of it. I thought feeling invisible was the bottom. I was wrong. The discovery happened on a Sunday morning. It was raining. The sky was a dark, bruised gray, and the rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse. Ryan was in the shower. I could hear the water running. He usually took his laptop everywhere with him. He was secretive about it. He had passwords on everything, and he would angle the screen away from me if I walked into the room. I never snooped. I told myself I trusted him, or maybe I just didn't want to know what he was hiding. But that morning, he had made a mistake. He had left his laptop on the kitchen island, and he had left it open. I was making coffee. I walked past the island to get a spoon. The screen was bright in the dim kitchen. I glanced at it, expecting to see a spreadsheet or a stock report. It was a messaging app, and it was active. A message popped up right as I looked. A little bubble with a heart emoji. I miss you already. Last night was amazing. He doesn't deserve you. My hand froze in midair. The spoon clattered onto the counter. The sound was loud in the quiet kitchen, but the water was still running in the bathroom. He couldn't hear me. I shouldn't have looked. I should have walked away. But my feet were glued to the floor. I leaned in. The sender's name was Madison. I knew Madison. She was his new executive assistant. She was 24. She had bright blonde hair and a laugh that was too loud. I had met her at the office Christmas party. She had smiled at me, a tight, pitying smile. Now I knew why. I scrolled up. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a painful, heavy rhythm. The messages went back 6 months. They weren't just flirting. They weren't just about sex, although there was plenty of that. They were talking about life. Ryan told her about his stress at work. He told her about his childhood. He told her things he hadn't told me in years. Then I saw my name. Ryan, she's just so boring, Madison. I come home and she just stares at me. She has no ambition, she's just dead weight. Madison, you poor thing, you need someone who matches your fire, someone alive. Ryan, I know, I'm planning on leaving her. I just need to figure out the finances first. I don't want her taking half my money. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees felt weak, and I had to grab the edge of the granite counter to keep from falling. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was mocking me. He was discussing his exit strategy with her. He was worried about his money, not my heart. He described me as dead weight. After 10 years. After I supported him when he was a nobody. After I ironed his shirts and cooked his meals and dimmed my own light so he could shine. I felt a wave of nausea. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run into the bathroom and throw the laptop into the shower with him. But then, a strange thing happened. The panic stopped. The hurt stopped. A cold, hard calm settled over me. It started in my chest and spread to my fingertips. I looked at the messages one last time. I memorized the dates. I saw the photos they sent each other, photos taken in our car, photos taken in hotels paid for with our joint account. It wasn't a tragedy anymore. It was a fact. Ryan didn't love me. He didn't even respect me. The marriage I was trying to save didn't exist. I was fighting for a corpse. I heard the water stop in the bathroom. I quickly closed the browser window. I wiped the counter where I had dropped the spoon. I poured my coffee. When Ryan walked into the kitchen, wrapped in a towel, his hair wet and messy, I was standing by the window, looking out at the rain. "Coffee's ready," I said. My voice was steady. It didn't shake. He grunted and went to the laptop. He typed in his password and checked the screen. He looked suspicious for a second, then relaxed. He didn't know I had seen. "Thanks," he said, not looking at me. I took a sip of my coffee. It was hot and it burned my tongue, but I welcomed the pain. It reminded me I was still alive. "I'm going to go to the gym," I said. "Fine," he said. "Don't be long. I need you to drop a package off for me later." "Okay," I said. I walked out of the apartment. I didn't go to the gym. I went to the park and sat on a wet bench for 2 hours. I watched the rain fall on the pond. I wasn't crying. I was planning. I knew exactly what I had to do. The Ryan I loved was gone. This man was a stranger who wanted to steal my dignity and my future. I wasn't going to let him. The next morning, Monday, I waited until Ryan left for work. He kissed me on the cheek, a cold, habitual peck, and told me not to forget to call the plumber. As soon as the elevator doors closed, I moved. I didn't scream. I didn't throw his clothes out the window. I didn't call Madison and curse her out. I didn't want the drama. I wanted out. I called a lawyer I had found online, a woman named Mrs. Gable who specialized in high-asset divorces. I had an appointment at 10 a.m. I walked into her office with a folder. Inside, I had printed screenshots of the bank statements I could access. I told her everything. I told her about the neglect, the emotional abuse, and the infidelity. Mrs. Gable listened. She was a sharp woman with gray hair and kind eyes. "We can fight him for everything, Claire," she said. "We have grounds." I shook my head. "I don't want a war, Mrs. Gable. I want freedom. I want a fair settlement, but mostly I want to be gone before he realizes I'm leaving. If I stay and fight, he will try to destroy me. He enjoys the power. I want to take his power away by not reacting." We drew up the papers. I signed them. Then I went back to the penthouse. I started packing. I didn't take everything. I didn't want the expensive furniture he had picked out. I didn't want the jewelry he had bought me as apologies for missed anniversaries. I only packed what was truly mine. My clothes, my design sketchbooks, the quilt my mother made me before she passed away, my books. I packed them into boxes and labeled them efficiently. I called a moving company. They came within the hour. By 4 p.m., the apartment looked different. It wasn't empty, but my presence was erased. My side of the closet was bare. My toiletries were gone from the bathroom counter. My books were missing from the shelves. It looked like a hotel room where only one person lived. I sat on the white leather sofa and waited. Ryan came home at 6:30 p.m. He walked in, talking on his headset. He hung up his coat. He didn't notice the boxes were gone because he never looked at anything closely. He walked into the living room and saw me sitting there. I was wearing my coat. My suitcase was next to me. He stopped. He frowned. "What's going on?" he asked. "Are you going somewhere? You didn't tell me you had a trip." I stood up. I felt incredibly calm. "I'm leaving, Ryan," I said. He laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of laughter. "Leaving? What, like a vacation? Where are you going?" "No," I said. "I'm leaving you. The divorce papers will be served to you tomorrow at your office." The laughter died in his throat. His face went red. "Is this a joke?" he snapped. "Because it's not funny, Claire. I'm tired." "It's not a joke," I said. "I know about Madison." The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. I watched his face. I expected him to deny it. I expected him to beg. Instead, he looked angry. He looked offended that I had found out. "So," he spat. "So you found out. Big deal. You're going to throw away 10 years of marriage because of a fling." "It's not a fling, Ryan. You told her you were planning to leave me. You told her I was dead weight." He flinched. He knew he was caught. "You were snooping." He took a step toward me, his voice rising to a shout. "You violated my privacy. You have no right." He was trying to intimidate me. He was trying to make me the bad guy. It was his classic move. I didn't back down. I didn't yell back. "I'm done, Ryan," I said softly. He stared at me. He looked confused. He was waiting for the explosion. He was waiting for me to scream, to cry, to throw things. He fed off that emotion. It made him feel important, but I gave him nothing. I was a gray rock. I was a calm ocean. "You can't just leave," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You have nothing without me. You're a failed interior designer. You have no money. You'll be back in a week, begging me to take you back." I picked up the handle of my suitcase. "Watch me," I said. I walked past him. He reached out to grab my arm, but I stepped to the side. "Don't touch me," I said. The authority in my voice surprised both of us. He froze. I walked to the door. I opened it. "Why?" he yelled after me. "Why aren't you fighting for this? Why aren't you screaming?" I turned back one last time. I looked at the man I had wasted 10 years on. He looked small. He looked pathetic. "Because," I said, "I'm already gone." I closed the door. I walked to the elevator. I didn't look back. And as I stepped out into the cool evening air of the city, I realized something. I hadn't shed a single tear. 2 weeks later, I was driving a rental truck down the coast of Oregon. The city was far behind me. The noise, the pollution, the expensive dinners, the fake smiles, it was all in the rearview mirror. I had nowhere to go, really. I had some savings, but not enough to buy a new place in the city. Then I remembered my grandmother's house. She had passed away 5 years ago and left me her small cottage in a town called Harbor Pine. It wasn't worth much. Ryan had wanted me to sell it. He called it a dump and a waste of tax money. I had refused. I had kept it, paying the taxes quietly from my own small account. I think a part of me always knew I would need an escape hatch. The drive was long. The scenery changed from concrete highways to winding roads lined with massive pine trees. The air got cleaner. I rolled down the window and smelled the salt, the ocean. I arrived in Harbor Pine in the late afternoon. The town was small. A main street with a bakery, a hardware store, a post office, and a diner. No high-rises, no traffic jams. I drove up the winding road to the cliffside where the cottage stood. It was small. The paint was peeling, a faded yellow color. The garden was overgrown with weeds. The stone wall was crumbling in places, but it overlooked the Pacific Ocean. The view was endless. I parked the truck and got out. My legs were stiff. I stood there and listened. All I could hear was the wind in the trees and the crash of the waves against the rocks below. Silence. Beautiful silence. I found the spare key under a loose stone by the porch, just where Grandma always kept it. The lock was stiff, but it turned. The door creaked open. The house smelled like dust and old lavender. It was cold. There were sheets covering the furniture. I walked in. It felt like stepping back in time. The kitchen still had the yellow tiles. The living room still had the fireplace where we used to roast marshmallows. I didn't feel lonely. I felt safe. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I didn't have to worry about Ryan criticizing my outfit or my cooking. I was the only person here. I spent the first few days just cleaning. I scrubbed the floors. I washed the windows. I tore down the dusty curtains and let the light flood in. Physical labor was good for me. My muscles ached at night, but it was a good ache. It was an honest ache. I slept in the small bedroom upstairs. The window faced the ocean. I left it open at night so I could hear the waves. My phone was quiet. I had blocked Ryan's number. I had blocked Madison. I spoke only to my lawyer. Ryan was furious, Mrs. Gable told me. He was trying to hide assets. He was telling everyone I was crazy. Let him talk, I told her. I don't care. I started to rediscover the simple things. I started waking up with the sun. I would make a pot of coffee and sit on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the fishing boats go out. I found an old pair of gardening gloves in the shed. I started tackling the weeds. I found rose bushes buried under the ivy, my grandmother's prize roses. They were still alive, struggling to breathe. I cleared the vines away. I pruned the dead wood. You're going to be okay, I whispered to the roses. We're both going to bloom again. The neighbors were kind. Mrs. Gable, not the lawyer, but a baker down the street with the same last name, brought me a loaf of sourdough bread. Good to see lights in the old Whitmore place, she said. You look a bit thin, dear, eat this. It was simple, it was direct. It was kindness without an agenda. I hadn't experienced that in a decade. One afternoon, I was walking along the beach, collecting sea glass. The wind was whipping my hair around my face. I wasn't wearing makeup. I was wearing old jeans and a thick sweater. I caught my reflection in a tide pool. I looked tired. I had dark circles under my eyes, but my eyes looked different. In the city, my eyes had looked dead. Flat. Now they looked clear. They looked fierce. I picked up a piece of blue sea glass and squeezed it in my hand. The sharp edge pressed into my palm. I was alone. I was divorced. I was starting over at 36 with nothing but a crumbling cottage and a few boxes. But as I looked out at the vast, wild ocean, I smiled. A real smile. I was free, and that was worth everything. I needed money. My savings were enough for a few months of groceries and electricity, but I couldn't live on them forever. More importantly, I needed a purpose. I needed to remember who I was before I became Ryan's wife. I updated my resume. I dusted off my portfolio, the one Ryan had called amateur and quaint. I put on my best suit, drove my rental truck into the center of town, and walked into the office of Stone and Shore Design. It was the only major design firm in the area. They specialized in coastal luxury. The building was made of glass and cedar wood, smelling of fresh coffee and blueprints. The owner, Daniel Brooks, was a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and hands that looked like they had actually built things, not just signed checks. He didn't look at my clothes or my ringless finger. He looked at my sketches. He flipped through the pages in silence. The silence stretched on for 5 minutes. My heart hammered in my chest. I was terrified he would say the same things Ryan used to say. I was terrified he would tell me I had no talent. Finally, he closed the folder. He looked me in the eye. "These are good," he said. "They have soul. You understand light." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Thank you." "We're swamped with a new resort project down the coast," Daniel said. "I need someone who can handle the interiors without me holding their hand. Can you start Monday?" "I can start today," I said. And just like that, I had a job. Working at Stone and Shore was the opposite of my life with Ryan. In the city, everything was about appearance. It was about who you knew and how expensive your shoes were. Here, it was about the work. Daniel treated me like a professional. He asked for my opinion on fabric swatches. When I suggested moving a wall in a client's beach house to open up the view, he didn't dismiss me. He looked at the plans, nodded, and said, "That's brilliant, Claire. Let's do it." Hearing those words, "That's brilliant," felt like water in a desert. I went into the bathroom afterwards and cried for 2 minutes, not from sadness but from relief. I hadn't realized how thirsty I was for a single drop of respect. My routine became my medicine. I woke up at 6 a.m. every morning. I made coffee and drank it on the porch, watching the fog roll off the ocean. I drove to work with the windows down. I worked hard all day, losing myself in colors and textures. I came home, cooked a simple dinner for myself, fresh fish, vegetables, rice, and ate it while reading a book. I worked on the cottage on weekends. The cottage was transforming, just like me. I sanded down the floors and stained them a warm honey color. I painted the walls a soft white to reflect the sea light. I planted hydrangeas along the walkway. One evening, about 3 months after I arrived, I was working late at the office. Everyone else had gone home. I was trying to figure out a lighting plan for a dining room. Daniel walked in. He was carrying 2 cardboard cups. "I saw your light on," he said. "Thought you might need some fuel." He placed a hot chocolate on my desk. "Thank you," I said, surprised. "You're doing great work, Claire," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "The clients love you. You have a way of listening to them that makes them feel heard." I smiled. "I spent a long time learning how to listen," I said. "I know what it feels like when no one listens to you." Daniel looked at me thoughtfully. He didn't pry. He didn't ask for the gossip about my marriage. He just nodded. "Well, we're lucky to have you," he said. "Don't stay too late. The ocean air is better than office air." He left. I sat there with the hot chocolate, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the drink. I wasn't just an employee here. I was a person. Ryan had tried to convince me that I was useless without him. He had tried to make me believe that the world was scary and I was incompetent. He was wrong. I was paying my own bills. I was fixing my own house. I was making my own friends. I remember one specific Saturday. I had just finished painting the front door a deep ocean blue. I stepped back to look at it. There was paint on my cheek and dirt under my fingernails. My hair was a mess. I looked down at my hands. They looked strong. They looked capable. I realized I hadn't thought about Ryan in 3 days. The ghost was fading. 6 months after I left, the phone call came. It was Jessica, a woman who used to be my friend in the city. I say friend in quotes because she was really just someone who came to our parties to drink our wine. She loved drama. She thrived on it. "Claire," she practically screamed into the phone. "Oh my God, have you heard?" I was in the garden pruning the rose bushes. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the stone wall. "Heard what, Jessica?" I asked calmly. Snip, snip. "Ryan is getting married to that girl, the secretary." I paused. The shears hovered over a dead branch. I waited for the pain. I waited for the jealousy to twist my stomach. I waited for the anger to make my hands shake. Nothing, I felt, nothing. "When?" I asked. "Next Saturday, can you believe it? It hasn't even been a year since you left. They're doing it at the plaza in New York. A huge black tie thing. Everyone is talking about it. They're saying it's going to be the wedding of the decade." "That sounds expensive," I said. Jessica paused, clearly disappointed by my lack of reaction. "Is that all you have to say? Claire, he's replacing you. He's trying to rub it in your face." "He can do whatever he wants, Jessica," I said, cutting off the dead branch. "He's not my husband anymore. He's not my problem." "Well, I just thought you should know," she said, her voice dropping. "People are saying he looks manic, like he's trying too hard, but Madison looks like she won the lottery." "I have to go, Jessica," I said. "I have work to do." I hung up. I stood there in the quiet garden. The ocean breeze cooled the sweat on my neck. Ryan was getting married. He was standing in a tuxedo, promising to love and cherish a woman he had been sleeping with behind my back. He was probably spending a fortune on flowers and champagne, trying to prove to the world that he was happy, trying to prove he had won. But standing there in the dirt, surrounded by the smell of blooming roses and salt water, I knew the truth. He hadn't won anything. He was just repeating the cycle. He needed someone to adore him. He needed an audience. Madison was his new audience. I pitied her. The day of the wedding arrived. I knew exactly what was happening in New York. It was 5 p.m. there. The ceremony was starting. The music was playing. Ryan was probably checking his reflection in a mirror, fixing his tie, making sure he looked perfect. In Harbor Pine, it was 2 p.m. I didn't sit at home and cry. I didn't drink a bottle of wine. I went for a hike. There was a trail that led up the cliffs north of town. It was steep and rocky. I climbed steadily, my breathing rhythmic, my legs burning with effort. When I reached the top, the view took my breath away. The Pacific Ocean stretched out forever, a vast sheet of blue diamonds under the sun. I sat on a rock and drank water from my canteen. I closed my eyes. I imagined the wedding. I imagined the stuffy ballroom, the fake smiles, the hushed gossip, the pressure to be perfect. Then I opened my eyes and looked at the horizon. I had no one to impress up here. I had no one to serve. I took a deep breath. The air tasted of freedom. I release you, I said out loud. My voice was snatched away by the wind. I release you, Ryan. You can't hurt me anymore. I stayed up there until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It was more beautiful than any wedding decoration money could buy. I walked back down the trail in the twilight. When I got home, I made a cup of herbal tea and sat by the fire. I fell asleep on the sofa with a book on my chest. I didn't dream about him. Indifference is a strange thing. It's not angry. It's not loud. It's just quiet. It's the absence of burden. It was the feeling of putting down a heavy backpack I had been carrying for 10 years. I didn't care if they were happy. I didn't care if they were miserable. I just didn't care. I wasn't at the wedding, of course. But in the age of social media, you don't have to be present to see the disaster. And I heard the full story later from the man who caused it, Frank Miller. Frank was an old friend of my grandmother. He was in his 70s, a retired lawyer with a sharp wit and zero tolerance for nonsense. He had handled my grandmother's estate. He was also, coincidentally, a former business associate of Ryan's father, which was why he got an invite to the wedding. Frank came to see me a week after the event. He sat on my porch, drinking lemonade, looking very pleased with himself. "You should have been there, Claire," Frank said, a twinkle in his eye. "It was quite the show." "Tell me," I said. "Well," Frank started, "it was lavish, too lavish. Shrimp towers, ice sculptures, the works. Ryan was strutting around like a peacock. Madison was showing off a ring that looked heavy enough to break her finger." Frank took a sip of lemonade. "I was sitting at table 4, he continued, right near the head table. Ryan was giving a speech. He was talking about how he had finally found his equal. He was making little digs at the past, talking about how he wasted time before finding true success." I rolled my eyes. "Classic Ryan." "Exactly," Frank said. "It rubbed me the wrong way. I knew how he treated you. I knew he forced you out of your home with nothing. So, later in the night, the champagne was flowing. I walked up to congratulate him. Madison was hanging on his arm. A bunch of his investors were standing around." Frank leaned forward. I said, loudly enough for the whole group to hear, "Congratulations, Ryan. It's good to see you bouncing back. Especially after losing such a fortune." Frank chuckled. Ryan looked confused. He said, "What do you mean? I didn't lose anything. I kept the penthouse. I kept the accounts." "And then?" I asked, leaning in. "And then," Frank said, "I dropped the hammer. I said, 'Oh, I don't mean the penthouse, son. I mean the coastal estate, the one Claire inherited.'" Ryan had laughed. "You mean that dump in Oregon, that shack, it's worthless." Frank shook his head. That's when I told him. I said, "Ryan, didn't you read the zoning reports? That shack sits on 5 acres of prime coastal cliffside. The town just rezoned it for luxury development. Plus, there were the stocks your grandmother-in-law left. Since you were so eager to get Claire to sign the divorce papers quickly, you didn't check the updated trust valuation. Claire is worth about 10 times what you are right now." I gasped. "You told him that?" "I did," Frank grinned. "And the best part is, it's true. I finished the valuation last week. The land value skyrocketed while you were renovating." "What did he do?" I asked. "He turned pale," Frank said. "Like a sheet." He looked at Madison. Madison looked at him. You could see the gears turning in her head. She thought she married the rich guy. Suddenly, she realized the ex-wife she laughed at was the one with the real power. Frank laughed. The investors heard it too. One of them asked Ryan, "Is that true? You let a portfolio like that walk out the door?" Ryan started stuttering. He looked weak. He looked incompetent. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I knew the house had value, but I didn't know about the rezoning. I didn't care about the money, not really. But the irony was delicious. Ryan had always valued people by their net worth. He had discarded me because he thought I was low value. The whisper spread through the room like wildfire, Frank said. People were whispering, "He let her go. She's the wealthy one. He made a mistake." The narrative changed in an instant. He wasn't the successful tycoon upgrading his life. He was the fool who threw away a diamond to pick up a rhinestone. Frank patted my hand. It was poetic justice, my dear, the look on his face. He realized that by trying to crush you, he had actually set you free to prosper. And he was left with the bill for a wedding he couldn't really afford, with a wife who only loves money, realizing he let the real money walk away. I looked out at the ocean. "I didn't even know," I whispered. "That's why it worked," Frank said. "You won because you didn't play his game, you just lived your life." The fallout wasn't slow. It was an avalanche. After Frank's revelation, the wedding reception had descended into awkward chaos. But the real damage happened an hour later. Someone, a guest, probably a teenager, had been recording on their phone when Ryan lost his temper. The video went viral on Monday morning. I saw it on my laptop at work. The title was "CEO Meltdown at Wedding." In the video, Ryan was red-faced, screaming at a waiter because the wine was the wrong vintage. But it wasn't about the wine. It was clearly about the pressure exploding inside him. He threw a glass. It shattered against the wall. He screamed, "Do you know who I am? I am the one in charge. Everyone listens to me." Madison was in the background, trying to calm him down, looking embarrassed. He shoved her hand away. "Get off me," he yelled at his new bride. "You're just as useless as the rest of them." The room went dead silent. The camera zoomed in on Madison's face. She looked horrified. She looked trapped. I paused the video. It had 2 million views. The comments were brutal. "What a psycho. I feel bad for the new wife. This guy manages money. I wouldn't trust him with a piggy bank." The internet is a cruel judge. Ryan's carefully crafted image of the cool, collected businessman was destroyed in 30 seconds. But the internet wasn't the only thing reacting. The market reacted. Ryan's firm relied on trust. Investors trusted him to be stable. A man who screams at waiters and shoves his bride on his wedding day does not look stable. By Wednesday, 3 major clients had pulled their accounts from his firm. By Friday, the board of directors asked him to step down for personal reasons. He was fired. Then came the calls. My phone started ringing on Saturday morning. It was a number I had blocked, but he was calling from a new one. I knew it was him. I let it go to voicemail, then another call and another. Finally, I picked up. I didn't say anything, I just listened. "Claire," his voice sounded ragged. He sounded drunk. "Claire, don't hang up." "Please, what do you want, Ryan?" I asked. "It's all gone," he said. "They fired me. Can you believe it? After everything I did for them." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. I wasn't being sarcastic. I was genuinely sorry for him, in a distant way. It's sad to watch a building collapse, even if you hated the architecture. "Madison left," he said. A sob broke through his voice. "She packed a bag yesterday. She said she didn't sign up for this. She said I humiliated her." "I'm sure that hurts," I said. "I made a mistake, Claire," he said. He was crying now. "I made a huge mistake. You were the only one who was real. You were the only one who actually loved me, weren't you? Not for the money, just for me." "Yes," I said. "I did love you, but that was a long time ago." "We can fix this," he said, his voice rising with desperation. "I can come to Oregon. We can start over. I know you have money now. We can build something huge. With your design eye and my business brain. Claire, please, I need you." There it was, I need you. Not I love you, not I'm sorry. He needed a life raft. He was drowning, and he wanted to drag me back into the water to keep himself afloat. He wanted my stability. He wanted my new wealth. I looked around my living room. The sun was shining on the honey-colored floors. The fire was crackling. My life was peaceful, it was clean. "Ryan," I said gentle, "you don't need me, you need to learn how to be alone." "Don't do this," he screamed. The anger was back. "You owe me, I made you." "Goodbye, Ryan," I said. I hung up, then I blocked the number. I sat there for a moment, listening to the silence. He was right about one thing. His world had unraveled. Without a woman to prop him up, without an audience to clap for him, He was just a sad, angry man in an empty penthouse. I felt a deep sense of closure. The monster wasn't under my bed anymore. The monster was just a man on a phone, miles away, and he had no power over me. It has been a year since the wedding. Life in Harbor Pine has settled into a beautiful rhythm. I am now a partner at Stone and Shore Design. My name is on the door, Brooks and Whitmore. Daniel and I work together every day. It's strictly professional, but it's the healthiest relationship with a man I've ever had. We respect each other. I used some of the inheritance money to start a scholarship fund for young women in design. I didn't want to hoard it. I wanted it to grow. My garden is fully in bloom now. The roses that were once buried under weeds are vibrant and red. They climb the stone wall, strong and thorny and beautiful. I bought a dog. A golden retriever named Barnaby. He follows me everywhere. He sleeps at my feet while I work. I hear about Ryan sometimes, through the grapevine. He had to sell the penthouse. He moved to a smaller city. He's working a mid-level job. Madison filed for an annulment. He is living the life he used to threaten me with, a small, obscure life. But I don't feel glee. I don't sit around laughing at his misfortune. Honestly, I rarely think of him at all. Revenge isn't about destroying someone else. That takes too much energy. That keeps you tied to them. Real revenge is being happy. Real revenge is waking up in the morning and not feeling that heavy dread in your stomach. It's making a cup of coffee and liking the person who is drinking it. I stood on my porch this morning. The ocean was rough, the waves crashing high against the cliffs. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I am 37. I am divorced. I am alone in a cottage on the edge of the world, and I have never been more whole. I didn't destroy Ryan's life. I simply stopped saving it. I stopped being the glue that held his fragile ego together. And the moment I stepped away, he fell apart. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled at the sea. Sometimes, the quietest revenge is choosing yourself. If this story spoke to you, like, share and comment. Are you ready to walk away too?